Everyone doing? Good? All right. Little bit of a different feel for the first week of March for all of us, right? That being said, I'm really excited about the work that our scouts have done over the past several months. We've had a really productive January and February in terms of draft meetings, UFA meetings, and overall roster planning. And we're looking forward to the next, call it 6 to 8 months, with the opportunities that will be afforded to us to improve the talent and competition across the roster. The other thing I wanted to mention at the start is we are excited that we're not an organization in transition this offseason, and that we're really kind of into year two of our of our roster building processes with our scouts and coaches. So we're looking forward to the next several months to improve the team. And with that, I'll open up for your questions.
Thank you very much, AB. Our first question will come from Tom Withers.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Andrew. Good to see you, man.
We'll see you too, Tom.
I know you got a lot of decisions coming up over the next few months, free agency, et cetera. Where do things stand with Baker Mayfield and that fifth-year option?
Tom, it's a good question. I think you know me well enough that that's not something that I'll really talk about publicly. We've been pretty consistent with our messaging around Baker that we think he had a really strong season for us. We like the maturation and the growth both on and off the field, and we're looking forward to him continuing to take steps his second year in the offense.
Andrew, is there consensus? Is there unanimity within the organization that Baker is your guy going forward? And if I could follow that with, what do you want to see next from him?
Yeah, I guess I'll answer in reverse. See, just like all of our players, we want to see them take strides and show growth as we go into year two within our offense and defensive systems. I mean, look, Baker is the first quarterback, and you guys probably know the years more than I do. That's led this organization, led this team to the playoffs, a playoff victory. He's endured an enormous amount of adversity in his young career, just quite honestly, with the changes that he's gone through with coaching staffs, front offices, offensive systems, and he's risen above it all. And so I think we all saw him grow from week to week to week last year, and we expect him to continue that progress and have a fantastic 2021 season for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. We'll go to Mary Kay Cabot next.
Thanks, Andrew. An immediate decision that you might have to make would be about David Njoku, considering that the fifth-year option will become guaranteed on the 17th, and he kind of let on it during Super Bowl week that maybe he's still not overly thrilled about being here. So just wondering your thoughts on him, and then the corollary to that is Kyle Rudolph also became available yesterday, and is he somebody you guys might be interested in?
So I guess a couple of things there. First, we'll explore every available option that becomes available to us to improve the team. That all being said, we're really pleased with our tight end room. I think that group did a nice job for us this past year, and it's obviously a focal point in Kevin's offense. And look, I thought David played really well for us last year. He did a nice job with his teammates. He did a nice job with his role within the offense. And look, we think he's a very young and productive player.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Kay. We'll go to Scott Petrick.
Hey, Andrew, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you, Scott?
I'm good. Hey, do you feel you're in position to be aggressive at the start of free agency, kind of like you were at this time last year?
I guess from my perspective, we always want to be known as an aggressive front office. Now, I think perhaps how people define aggression may vary from person to person to person. That doesn't always mean that, we're going to be heavy spenders externally. I guess maybe the best way to answer your question, I think that we have enough flexibility to adjust and maneuver as is appropriate. If there's a player that we think fits a need and has the right value, I think we have the capability to be aggressive in pursuit. But I also think that we're fortunately in a position this offseason with what we have on the current roster and the overall resources, not just in terms of cap dollars and picks, where we can be very selective and also allow things to come to us. So I wouldn't necessarily pigeonholed us into any particular approach, just because, what we did last year may not always necessarily apply in years moving forward.
Does your roster situation now feel a lot different than it did a year ago, where maybe you felt like I need to go get a right tackle, I need to go get a tight end?
I think it's certainly different in some areas. I do think that we have some core areas that are a little bit more solidified than they were last year. But on the flip side, there are areas on the team where, we do have players who are no longer under contract or that we do have to make decisions on. So it is a little bit of a balancing act, but I think we all feel optimistic about the foundation that we have in place going into this offseason.
Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. Nate Ulrich, you're up.
Hey, Andrew, good to see you. The quarterback carousel throughout the league has been pretty, dramatic at times this offseason. And, the Browns for so many years would have been right in the thick of it. What has it done for you as a GM? What has it done for the organization to have Baker Mayfield? And, what does it allow you to do when your number one focus isn't getting into the fray that we've seen this offseason with the quarterback market?
Nate, you're hitting on an important point, because the quarterback position is, in my mind, the most important position in professional sports. And until you have a baseline of winning level quarterback play, I think it's really difficult to win and make progress in the NFL. And oftentimes, if that position isn't productive or it isn't solidified, it can feel a lot like operating in neutral. And so that's something that's certainly not lost on us, and it's definitely not lost on us organization.
Thank you, Nate. Jake Trotter will have our next question.
Yeah. Hey, Andrew, how is Odell coming along from his knee injury?
Yeah, I'll say this about perhaps all of our injured guys. They're all progressing really well, and that includes Odell. I mean, I think he's right on track.
You last time we talked, you committed to him, excited about what he can do in this offense. Is anything changed with him in terms of the role you see on him on this team going forward, and potentially fitting in with the rest of the offense the way it played so well down the stretch last year without him?
No, I think he's a dynamic player who can be incredibly productive in this system. So we're looking forward to getting him back healthy.
Thank you, Jake. Let's go to Tony Grossi.
Hello, Andrew. Good to see you.
Hey, Tony, how you doing?
Good. You have stated that Howie Roseman is a mentor to you, your years spent with him. Do you view what's happened with Carson Wentz and the Eagles as a cautionary tale as to your future dealings with your quarterback?
I don't know that with respect to anything that's happened, to any of the other 31 teams, that has a major bearing in terms of how we're going to, address the quarterback situation here. To me, we'll evaluate that internally and make the decision that we think is best for, our team and our organization. So I think it would be maybe a stretch to say that that's going to serve as a cautionary tale or any type of blueprint for us. We'll make the best decision with that we think will make the best decision for us with the information that we have on hand.
And you have talked about being aggressive a lot in pursuit of talent. Would you characterize your pursuit of J.J. Watt as aggressive?
I wouldn't talk about any player that's on another roster, quite honestly. I'd probably echo what I've said for probably the last year, that, we like to explore anything that has a chance to improve the roster. We'll weigh it and measure it based on, other alternatives that are available to us or may be available to us. One thing I do know is that, I think we'll have plenty of opportunities to continue to improve the team over the next 6 to 8 months.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Daryl Ryder, go ahead.
Hey, Andrew, good to see you. Wanted to ask you about Nick Chubb, who's entering the final year of his rookie deal, and just, if not asking you to negotiate through the media here, but just could you speak on what he's meant, and then also just the sense of urgency, to get him in the fold long term?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to Nick in particular, I think you all know, the affinity that we have for him, both as a player and as a person. He's modeled that over the first 3 years of his career here. And I think that that's something that we certainly see every day and that you all can see externally. Daryl, I think you perhaps maybe alluded to this maybe a little bit indirectly, but we have a lot of, major decisions that we're going to make. And the first of those comes with guys that have expiring contracts within the next 2.5 weeks. We do have a number of players who are extension eligible, of which Nick is one. And that's something that, we'll sort through as we go through the off season. But, certainly we like Nick, the player and the person. And, all those big decisions are things that we have to figure out in the overall big picture as we navigate the next several months.
Yeah, to your point about the decisions you have to make here in the next couple of weeks, you've got a lot of defensive players that are going to become free agents. And, part of that is just, what you did last off season, but you also have a lot of starters on that side of the ball. So could you just, touch on maybe where you're at as far as that process goes, and also just the challenge if you're not able to retain a lot of those guys of having to replace them for this season?
Yeah, so I think you're right. There's that's the challenge of the job. It really is. And whether it's us or any of the other 31 teams, regardless of what your record was the previous year, there's typically a lot of turnover on NFL rosters. It's that's part of what the salary cap is designed to do, and it does make it a difficult challenge and a difficult puzzle. With our own guys, we typically take the approach where we do have communication with them throughout the off season. It starts with their exit meetings after the season, then with the reps of all of our players that have expiring deals in January, and then we thought more as appropriate, this weekend and next, before the start of the new league year. So we pride ourselves on having an open line of communication and as much transparency as possible, but it's an enormous challenge, right? We have a lot of guys that have expiring contracts that played significant roles for us and were a big part of our success. In an ideal world, you keep every single one of your players. I think we all know on this call that that's really, it's not possible from year to year. So those are certainly big decisions.
Thank you, Daryl. Ellis Williams has our next question.
Alice, I can't quite hear you, bud.
Ellis, is your microphone on your computer? You're unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we have you.
All
Go
right.
ahead.
Thanks for the time, Andrew.
No problem.
All right. I want to ask you just a roster building, scouting, general philosophy question. As a GM, a guy with final say, when are you most comfortable when it comes down to, or what makes you most comfortable, I should say, when pursuing or deciding on a player that either is an ideal or near perfect scheme fit? You guys are running 4-3 sub-packaging stuff, or, on the line tight end, point of attack blocking stuff, or a player that may not be the best fit schematically, as in he hadn't ran it before in the pros or wasn't used to it in college, thus entrusting your coaching staff with coaching them up. I realize in a perfect world you find that balance, but when it does lean one way or the other, do you find yourself more comfortable when you find that player that matches your scheme, or when it leans towards entrusting your coaches to, in the player development sense, and coaching them into fitting that scheme?
No, that's a fantastic question, Alice. So it really does depend. It's taken on a case-by-case basis. Certainly for the player that maybe isn't a clean fit for what we would ask him to do if he was on our team, you really do lean heavily on the insight with your coaching staff. But the other thing that comes into play, like at the end of the day, our job is to acquire and maintain talent on the roster. And that's really the first order. That's really the first order principle. And in an ideal world, we are able to have some type of flexibility in our systems to accommodate players who may not be clean schematic fits. But the other element in play, Ellis, is maybe how far of let's say a non-perfect fit that player may be, because there definitely are degrees. And then the second piece is just the level of investment that would take to acquire the player, because there is some inherent risk if someone's not a clean fit in the system. There is some inherent risk of failure if you're asking them to produce in a manner that they're not accustomed to producing or they haven't been successful in producing. So really those two things: feedback from the coaching staff, level of investment that obviously equates to the amount of risk that you'll take on the player. Those all come into play.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Ellis. Fred Greetham is next.
Andrew, with the anticipated, salary cap maybe lower than it normally had been, would that affect your planning, your free agency approach, or your, extensions with your own guys and so forth, as opposed to the anticipated raising of the cap in 2022?
Yeah, Fred, it will. It's a good question, and it will. I think if you look at, league-wide, the available cap dollars, it's like, 40% what it's been in the 40% of what it's been in the past. Look, a year ago this time, generally speaking, I think everybody across the league thought the cap would be, around 210, and we're likely $30 million north of that. That means everybody across the league is going to feel that squeeze, and we're not excluded from feeling that effect. Now, that all being said, I do think that we are in a in a healthy position where we can adapt and adjust and continue to improve the team and retain core talent. But to suggest that that's going to have zero impact on us, when it's going to impact really every team in the NFL, I think that would be disingenuous.
Thank you, Fred. Jeff Shadell is up.
Well, Andrew, I was going to ask you that question, but so let me ask you this: linebacker. How strong is the free agent linebacker class, especially inside?
I don't know that I would comment on strengths or weaknesses with any particular position group. Just to say, Jeff, that there are good players that are going to be available as on the street. There are going to be good players that are available in unrestricted free agency. There are going to be good players that are available in the draft. So,
thanks, Jeff. Zach Jackson, you're next.
Hi, Andrew. Question about the cap. On the outside, we would look at a team's cap, not necessarily yours, and say they already spend a lot of money at that position, or they would never go to a certain position, over a certain amount. Are those, conversations you guys have inside too, or is it all on a case-by-case basis as you guys, continue to spend on this?
I think it's fair to say, Zach, that probably in all NFL buildings, there are some maybe higher level guiding principles, but it's honestly not, at least for us, it's honestly not that dogmatic. It's not like we have a hard budget across the offense or defense or at different, position groups, because it really is about resource allocation and ultimately making sure that you're getting the desired impact for your level of investment at a certain area of the roster. So I know that that's perhaps a little bit general, a little bit vague, but it is a lot more perhaps fluid than people think.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Dan Lobby, go ahead.
Hey, Andrew. I've got two kind of, I guess, bigger picture questions for you. The first is there's this impression that the trade market in the NFL hasn't quite caught up to other leagues, like it's getting there. But you've also worked under some of the most aggressive GMs or personnel people when it comes to trades. How does that sort of inform how you kind of lay out your plan and how you might use the trade market to make this team better as opposed to just free agency?
So the trade market will be something that we are always in. I do agree that perhaps our sport hasn't quite caught up to some of the other sports in terms of trade volume and trade activity. Although I think you've seen in recent years that trend is starting to shift a little bit. I think the other thing that's maybe a little bit different, with our sport, relative to some of the others, bigger roster sizes, the cap structure is fundamentally different. And then honestly, just how flexible an individual contract structure is, that sometimes makes trading a little bit more challenging relative to, let's call it, the NBA or MLB where those contracts are fully guaranteed. So I think when people say that, the assumption is always that people aren't willing to trade. I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I think the financial aspect, plays a component into it. And I think the other thing is, let's say you're trading for a third baseman in your baseball team, playing third base for, the Yankees or the Cardinals, it's largely the same. That may not be the case position to position with football. So all of those maybe nuances make finding trade partners in certain areas may be a little bit more challenging in our sport relative to others.
So my other question, sort of along those lines, is you mentioned MLB and the NBA. There's such different leagues and different structures, but you have a guy in your building who came from baseball. You worked under Sashi Brown, who went to the NBA. Do you study kind of what other GMs and other sports do and see if there's some things you can kind of steal from those sports and that you might be able to use in the NFL that maybe no one else has kind of figured out how to bring over yet?
I do. I don't know that I have any type of, special wisdom on that front, but look, I think that there are some creative structures that have happened in other sports that have actually bled into the NFL, whether it's teams, paying down salary to acquire a player or things along those natures. Like, right, those really probably had their origins in baseball and hoops. And, I think certainly some of the mechanisms that are in play with some of the other major sports, I think could continue to bleed into the NFL. But I do think that there's a fair amount of overlap already.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Mary Kay Cabot, back to you.
Yes, Andrew, I know you mentioned that, you want to have all your players back and you've got expiring contracts, but I'm going to ask you just specifically because Richard kind of came out and said that, he hadn't received an offer yet and seemed a little bit concerned that, maybe he might not get the opportunity to be back here. So I have a follow-up question after this, but can you speak to Richard specifically? Is he somebody that you guys would really love to have back on the team, and might you try to get that done before he hits the market?
Yeah, I won't touch on the specific, dialogue that we've had, but, I think suffice it to say, we'd like to have Richard back. It's obviously, he played a key role for us this past year, and, we have a really positive history with him. But look, free agency can be difficult, and obviously that's he's really earned the right to make the decision that's most appropriate for him, and we'll maintain consistently good communication with him and his reps, and we'll see where it goes.
Okay, and then just a quick follow-up on that. It's sort of been the off-season of cryptic tweets that we have to try to decipher. And Jarvis had one of those last week where he tweeted something like, now I can't even remember what it was, something like, when one door closes, a bigger one opens is what it was. So, it left all of us thinking, what's up with Jarvis? So is everything cool with Jarvis?
You guys are going to have to ask him. He played really well for us this past year. He's one of our team leaders. I unfortunately I don't follow him on Twitter, but we like Jarvis a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mary Kay. To Scott Petrick.
Hey, Andrew, as you head into this offseason, how important is a defensive end spot opposite Miles?
Scott, so important. I don't know that I would necessarily single that position out among others across the defense. If I'm guessing, maybe perhaps where you're going with this question. I think that it's great to have, two bookends along the defensive line. Very few teams do. And I think there are a number of different configurations that can make a successful defensive line. So look, we'll look to add talent at that spot, no different than we would all across the defense and up and down the roster. But I wouldn't necessarily get too narrowed in there.
I guess I'm just asking because OV is a free agent. He's coming off the Achilles, so it looks like there's a big opening there, and it looks like there's options available in free agency.
Mm-hmm. But look, we'll look anywhere we can improve the team. We will, but I wouldn't necessarily look. Obviously, OV was very, very productive for us this year, and we're going to have to make sure that we're able to maintain a level of effectiveness along our front. But we'll have time on all of that, and we'll have plenty of opportunities across the defense to make sure that we can continue to be effective on that side of the ball.
Thanks.